Welcome to our daily reflection for this Thursday, March 20th. And today we're really asked the question, whose voice do you heed? Whose voice do you listen to more than any others? Whose voices are out there? What voices are you seeking after? Maybe in podcasts, maybe in media, maybe amongst relationships and friends. And today we're challenged by the Word of God to seek out and hear and to be attentive to the voice of God. And so in the first reading today from Jeremiah, we have a contrast between a barren bush and a tree that's planted by streams of water. And of course, the barren bush represents the person who leans on and trusts in human strength and basically the world and humanity, other people, for their trust, for their to ensure their happiness and their security and their peace and well-being. And then the person who's like a tree planted by waters, that person, as we hear in the Psalm today, Psalm 1, is the person who is planted and rooted by the Word of God. They listen to the Word of God. They listen to the law of the Lord day and night. And that gives them a nourishment. That gives them a strength and a rootedness. And so, and then at the end of the gospel, we're told in this contrast, another contrast, just like as sharp as the withered bush versus the living tree, we have the rich man who feasts sumptuously but ignores the poor and is self-centered, and in their egoism, they're consoled in human pleasures, but then they die, they're in agony and fire. And then the poor man Lazarus is then taken up into the bosom of Abraham and he's consoled. And so we have this great contrast between the rich man and the poor man, who one in the flames and one in consolation and comfort, just as sharp a contrast as the barren bush and the living tree. And in all that, at the end, Jesus gives a commentary when the rich man says, go back to my 5 brothers and tell them that I can go back and tell them and warn them. And Jesus says, if they don't listen to Moses and the prophets, someone coming back from the dead will not wake them into faith. And that's really a astonishing word. And that idea of listening. And so here the question is hearing. And what Jesus says at the end about listening to Moses and the prophets, that is the voice of God, is exactly what Psalm 1 and this image from the prophet Jeremiah is about, with the tree planted by living waters. Because that tree planted by living waters the waters represent the Word of God, and the tree, the righteous person who's rooted. And so what we realize is, as we reflect on this Word of God today, is listening is how we draw roots. And so are you listening to the voices of the world, and so you're rooted in worldly security? Or are you listening to the voice of God? In other words, are you putting your roots and you're established in the Word of God, in God? And so we realize then that listening is what roots us into where we put our trust. And so what voices do we listen to? Where are we growing our roots? To what source do we find our nourishment? And that is a great question for us. There's so many podcasts, there's so many voices we can listen to in song and in podcasts and so many different things. And the question is, who am I listening to? Whose voice do I seek? Is it the Lord's? And that's what we want to do during this Lenten season, so that we can be a fruitful tree bearing fruit in all seasons. May the Lord bless and keep you.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.